Ulfric Stormcloak. There is likely no character in the Elder Scrolls V who is more controversial and debated. Who is he really? Nobody knows. There are normally two schools of thought when it comes to Ulfric. The first is that he is exactly what he seems, a born leader, charismatic, devoted to his people, and ready to lay it all on the line for freedom from an empire he views as tyrannical and oppressive. And I think this is true. Second school of thought we often hear is that he's a Thalmor sleeper agent who actively and willingly works for the Thalmor to further their goals against the Empire, their greatest enemy. This is hinted at in certain bits of the lore, but I don't think this is the case. However, I don't think the first school of thought is the end of the story either. Over these long years playing this game, getting to know its characters, reading the lore, and immersing myself in this world, I've come to see that Ulfric is probably the most complex and interesting character I have ever seen in a video game, rivaling those found in classic literature and artfully executed cinema. It really is a testament to the beautiful genius of storytelling Bethesda can achieve. But I digress. This video is meant to express my personal interpretations of the lore and make sense of some of the pieces of Ulfric's story that frankly just don't make sense with the greatly limited information we are given. Hopefully my insight will provoke your thoughts and maybe you'll have some insightful revelations of your own, but please keep in mind that what you are about to hear is a lot of interpretation. It's not canon, and I'm not trying to present it as such. There, we got the disclaimer out of the way. I'll do my best, though, to make it clear what is actual lore and what is simply my interpretations of it. What we know about Ulfric begins during the Great War, the conflict between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion some 30 years before the events of Skyrim. While fighting for the Empire during the Great War, Ulfric is captured by the Thalmor. He is imprisoned, tortured, and broken down. During the interrogation, Ulfric is made to believe that information he gave was critical to the Dominion capturing the Imperial City. However, the city had actually been captured before he had broken. Why would the Thalmor convince him of this? What could they hope to gain by telling him this lie? This is likely the most underrated piece of lore concerning Ulfric. Nobody talks about it, nobody bothers to question why they would do this. My interpretation of this part of the lore is this. Thalmor convinced him of this to blackmail him. If Ulfric was the reason the Dominion were able to capture the Imperial City, that means there were thousands of deaths on his hands and the potential fall of the Empire. Thalmor needed only to reveal this interrogation to the Empire after the war had ended, and the Empire would likely call for his execution. So now, they sort of had Ulfric under their thumb in a way. They knew he was an important figure in Skyrim, in line to be Jarl, but they also knew that he was a man who greatly valued honor and loyalty to his people. They couldn't just order him to rebel against the Empire and expect it to succeed. They needed to be cunning and action the perfect plan to make Ulfric believe that rebelling was his only option. The next piece of lore we have on Ulfric comes a few years after the Great War has ended. During the Great War, the Empire pulled all of its available soldiers to help the fight, leaving Markarth among many cities virtually undefended. The Reachmen, later known as the Forsworn, used this opportunity to peacefully reclaim their homeland of Markarth after over 700 years of being oppressed by the Nord population, being unable to freely practice their culture or religion. They peacefully ruled their kingdom for 2 years and were beginning talks with the Empire to have their kingdom officially recognized. However, Igmund, son of the deposed Jarl, beseeched Ulfric to help them retake the city. Ulfric agreed to do this under the pretense that Talos worship would be allowed officially within the city. Those familiar with the Elder Scrolls lore will know that this would be in full violation of the White Gold Concordat, the treaty that ended the Great War. According to what Igmund tells the player, it was hoped that the Thalmor wouldn't find out about the arrangement. So the city was taken back by Ulfric and his militia. This was very different than the peaceful coup led by the Reachmen 2 years earlier. Ulfric used the power of the Thu'um to reportedly shout them from the walls of Markarth. After the fighting was done, every official who worked for the Reachman government was put to the sword, even after they had surrendered. Native women were tortured to give up the names of forsworn fighters who had fled to the hills. Nords and Bretons alike were executed if they did not pick up a sword to help Ulfric and his men when they attacked the city. Shopkeepers, farmers, the elderly, and even children old enough to lift a sword were ordered to their death by Ulfric. Shocking? I know. You might be thinking to yourself now, wait, this is crazy. Where did he leave off the lore and transition into his interpretations? But I didn't. Ever since I brought the camera to Markarth and the Reach, this has all been canon lore. The really strange part? That the Empire wasn't enforcing the White Gold Concordat in Skyrim at this point. Why would Ulfric go to such brutal ends to have Talos worship officially allowed in the law books when nobody was even being punished for it? Why would he do all that for the sake of a technicality? And how could he get away with it anyways? Eventually an Imperial official would see that law. Something here just isn't adding up. Here is where my interpretations of these strange events begins. If the Thalmor can manipulate Ulfric, it would make sense that they have done so to others as well. Igmund is the right age to have fought in the Great War, and it would make sense for him to be one of these people, especially considering the Thalmor officials he has housed in his palace. My thoughts are that they ordered Igmund to beseech Ulfric. After all, Windhelm is pretty much as far away as you can get from Markarth and still be in Skyrim. Why ask Ulfric and not someone from one of the other holds? So the Thalmor played both sides, also ordering Ulfric to comply, and the Thalmor even throws them a bone. If they do this, Talos worship will be allowed within the city. Neither one could tell the other about their dealings with the Thalmor for fear of being branded a traitor and a coward. And so the Markarth incident occurs. Ulfric retakes the city, and all seems to be going according to plan. But when it comes time to hand the city over to the Empire, their officials claim they cannot allow Talos worship in law, as it would violate the White Gold Concordat. It is clear to Ulfric now that he has been used, and he begins to sweat. He can't reveal his dealings with the Thalmor to the Empire, but he fears that they will reveal it themselves now that he has been used for their mysterious ends. He fears he will be cast aside to the chopping block, and this is when he begins to act rashly and commits the war crimes that get him sent to Sidna Mine when the Empire does finally take control of the city. In the end, the Empire did legalize Talos worship, in full violation of the White Gold Concordat, in exchange for the city, but this freedom was briefly lived. It gave the Thalmor the excuse they needed to basically invade Skyrim and make sure the Empire was keeping up its end of the Concordat. Thalmor dossier on Ulfric states, the so-called Markarth incident was particularly valuable from the point of our strategic goals in Skyrim, although it resulted in Ulfric becoming generally uncooperative to direct contact. Now, if the Thalmor wanted to mount a full-on invasion of Skyrim under the pretense of finding Talos worship and making sure that the Empire was keeping up to the terms of the Concordat, why wouldn't they just send a few spies, document that the Empire wasn't enforcing the Concordat, and that's that? Why go through all this trouble? Because the Markarth incident was more valuable to them than simply gaining the freedom to move about within Skyrim. And let me read that again. It resulted in Ulfric becoming generally uncooperative to direct contact. So he was cooperative to their direct contact before this point? Interesting. So, Ulfric was in Sidna Mine with lots of time to think. Couldn't seek shelter from the Empire, and he could no longer be used as a tool of the Thalmor. He's an old stock Nord who highly values honor, and he wants to go to Sovngarde, and he doesn't think he'll get there by being executed for treason or getting shanked in prison for scraps of food. The next strange bit of Ulfric lore happens in Solitude. After he is released from Sidna Mine, he returns to Windhelm and is named Jarl. The Moot convenes to name Torrig the High King of Skyrim after his father Islaw dies. Torrig deeply respected Ulfric and was impressed when he used the Moot to call for Skyrim's independence from the Empire. Later, Ulfric went to Solitude to meet Torrig, who assumed Ulfric wanted to continue this discussion. However, Ulfric challenged Torrig to single combat for the throne and won. Some say that this was fair, as this duel was a time-honored tradition, and if Torrig was too weak to defend himself, he was not worthy to be king. Others say that this was dishonorable murder, since Torrig was barely a man while Ulfric was a grizzled war veteran wielding the power of the Thu'um. But which of these is true is of very little concern to me, because again, I see something very odd about this whole situation. Something doesn't add up. According to Sabil Stentor, who helped raise Torrig, he would have greatly considered Ulfric's bid for Skyrim's independence. If Ulfric wanted an independent Skyrim, why wouldn't he at least try to bring Torrig to support the cause? If the High King wanted to be independent of the Empire, the Jarls would have almost been obliged to follow suit. The province could have easily gained its independence without the need for a civil war at all. But Ulfric didn't even bring it up. He simply walked up and issued the challenge, even after Torrig welcomed him into the court, assuming the discussion would be about independence. Torrig wanted to have that conversation. Why didn't Ulfric want to at least try to bring it to the table and see what happened, and if Torrig didn't support independence, then Ulfric could have issued the challenge. My interpretation of this event? Ulfric thought it over after bringing it up at the Moot. If the Thalmor saw peaceful independence come about in Skyrim, to freely worship Talos, they would be pretty unhappy about it. They would probably want to punish Ulfric for it and reveal his interrogation to the Empire and to the High King. He would be seen as a traitor to the Empire and a coward by Skyrim. The Empire would likely demand Ulfric as a term of the independence, and Skyrim would be happy to oblige. Thalmor cunningly manipulated Ulfric into believing that his only option for survival or an honorable death was to rebel against the Empire. It's genius, really, and it couldn't have possibly worked out better for them. Elenwen, who had tortured Ulfric, was made ambassador to Skyrim to further antagonize him and to oversee the careful manipulation of both sides into creating a lasting conflict. Just as the Thalmor had done with almost every other province of the Empire, Skyrim was now severed from the White Gold Tower, using up Imperial resources and furthering the Thalmor goal of world domination. Well, that just about wraps it up. This has been my interpretation of the lore, and where it doesn't make sense about Ulfric, I've tried to add a little bit of my insight. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching.